Hi everyone, warm welcome. My pleasure and privilege to welcome you to this INCATE webinar, Entrepreneurs Club number 6, on how to become an entrepreneur. We'll welcome you in a few seconds once more. Just let the crowd come in, and once that stream of visitors is slowing down a bit, we are ready to shoot off. Starts looking good now. Let's start. Again, a warm welcome and a big pleasure to welcome you to this INCATE's Entrepreneurs Club. I'm Peter Seiler, and together with my lovely colleagues Helena Costa Pereira and Kerstin Breuer behind the scenes, we are happy to be the host for you this afternoon, at least from the perspectives of the time zone we are in. It's a big pleasure to welcome experts, entrepreneurs, to give you some insights on how to become and how to be and how to remain an entrepreneur. We at INCATE, the incubator for antimicrobial therapies in Europe, we are happy to support young inventors, young ventures, early stage startups on their way to become an investable venture. And we do that by mediating advice, mediating access to our network. We give some funding and we do some education. If you're interested to learn more, please go to www.incate.net or reach out to us at info@incate.net. We'll have the privilege of introducing Soumya Palil as our first speaker and as the moderator of today. Soumya is CEO and co-founder of Brigid Bio Limited, a novel antifungal immunotherapeutics company spun out from the University of Aberdeen. Soumya has almost two decades, it's an impressive number, years of expertise in biologics, drug discovery and commercial development of next generation immunotherapeutics and diagnostics. Importantly, Soumya played a key role in establishing the Scottish Biologics Facility, an internationally recognized antibody discovery center based in Aberdeen, and you will see in a minute why this is key. Soumya has been very successful in her role as a CEO, with raising over £1 million in pre-seed funding for Brigid Bio through a combination of commercial and non-dilutive sources. And very impressive part of her short bio is also the numerous awards Soumya was collecting, from the British Council Commonwealth Scholarship, Knowledge Transfer Partnerships in Scotland, from the Royal Society of Edinburgh, if I said that correctly, or at least close to the University of Aberdeen. And last but not least, Soumya is also our most recent INCATE Stage 2 awardee, with really paving the way for biologics and for antifungals. So we are very proud to have Soumya as our brave pavemaker in that system, and also Soumya will be your moderator and will also introduce her and her projects as a very first go. Thank you very much, Soumya. Now it's yours.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for that kind introduction, and also for the opportunity inviting us to be part of INCATE Entrepreneurial Club and hosting the event today. I'll just give an overview of today's format. So we've got 3 speakers today as part of the panel, and we will have talks from these 3 speakers first, and there will be an opportunity for the audience to ask 1 or 2 questions at the end of each talk. And after the talks, we'll have a panel session. There you can again ask more questions, either specifically to one of us as speakers, or you could have a general question, and we can all share our views, and we could also bring Peter into that conversation at the end of this. Okay, so with that, what I'll do, I'll share my slides and then give you a short summary of my entrepreneurial journey. So can everyone see the slides, okay? Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. So as Peter said, my name is Soumya Palil. I am the CEO and co-founder of Brigid Bio. So one question I get asked often is, what motivated me to transition into industry and set up my own business? And I would say the main reason is that the opportunity when you become an innovator or a product developer to convert or translate your research into real world products and creating impact by developing solutions to global challenges. And I would say that has been the main motivation for me. So I'll give you a brief summary of my career so far. I came to the UK to do my master's and continued to do my PhD, both in the University of Aberdeen in antibody engineering. My PhD was funded by a program called Knowledge Transfer Partnership, which is an industry academic partnership, and I worked in that project. And that gave me the opportunity to gain first-hand experience of how innovation can be driven by industry academic partnerships. And after my PhD, I was fortunate to receive the Royal Society of Edinburgh Commercialization Fellowship. So this is a program which is run by the Royal Society of Edinburgh in Scotland, along with Scottish Enterprise. And this is for promoting academic entrepreneurship in Scotland and accelerate the innovations in science and technology into real businesses. So as part of this fellowship, I received business training. I got mentorship from some of the industry experts and also business funding for that project. And that commercialization fellowship then landed me into the role of the head of Scottish Biologics Facility, which is a recombinant antibody discovery center, which is based at the University of Aberdeen. So as the head of Scottish Biologics Facility, I managed a portfolio of biologics drug discovery projects and also immunodiagnostic programs in a range of disease areas, ranging from neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's disease, all the way through to bacterial and fungal infections. And I would say the main focus within the Scottish Biologics Facility for us is translation. So any research projects, any program that we develop within the Scottish Biologics Facility, we will look into developing that into products, either through partnership with industry, or we also apply for commercial funding ourselves. So one such project is an academic collaboration I had with Professor Carol Munro from Aberdeen Fungal Group, which is based in the University of Aberdeen. And Professor Munro at that stage was studying novel fungal cell wall proteins as drug targets for developing therapeutic approaches for invasive fungal infections. And this was the basis of Brigid Bio, which, as Peter mentioned, is a spin-out company from the University of Aberdeen. And we are pioneering the development of novel immunotherapies to treat serious life-threatening invasive fungal infections. So we spun out from Aberdeen University in July last year, and our focus is to develop novel antibody-based treatments in invasive fungal infections, where there is a huge unmet need for safer and efficacious drugs. So the company is led by a team of experts. I would say we have, within the team, we have decades of experience in biologics drug discovery, antibody engineering, medical mycology, and we also have commercial experts within our team who have set up spin-out companies in the past and successfully exited companies to either biotech or pharma companies. So, invasive fungal infections, as I said, there is a desperate need for novel therapies. These infections are life-threatening in patients or individuals who are immunocompromised, such as undergoing chemotherapy, organ transplantation, and complex abdominal surgeries. Globally, 3 million people die each year due to infections caused by fungal pathogens such as Aspergillus and Candida. And the mortality associated with invasive fungal infections are unacceptably high, I would say, 40 to 80%, despite receiving treatment. And the reason for this high mortality is the limitations of current antifungals, which include drug toxicity, drug-drug interactions with complex treatments such as chemotherapy, the rising antifungal resistance is the same as AMR. We all hear about the rising antibiotic resistance, but antifungal drug resistance is also quite significant. And there are limitations with existing drugs, such as dosing frequency. The most effective drug that is used for fungal infections is an IV formulation, which needs administered daily. So a lot of patients are unnecessarily kept in hospitals because of this daily IV dosing. So if you look at some of the stats, in European ICUs, 79 cases are diagnosed daily, out of which 29 patients unfortunately die within the 30-day period. So this is even patients receiving treatment. So there is a huge clinical or a medical need for novel therapies in this area. So the key global organizations such as the WHO and CDC has recognized the impact of fungal infections on public health and the need for novel therapies. So this is where Brigid Bio comes in. Our solution to this problem is a novel antibody-based immunotherapy that can boost patient immune system and clear infection. So our approach has significant advantages compared to existing small molecule drugs. Our antibodies are fully human, first-in-class molecules with a novel mechanism of action. So far, the approaches are pathogen-specific, so it's killing the pathogen. No therapies are looking at improving the immune system or immune status of patients. And our approach is to actually boost that immune system and help with a positive clinical outcome in these patient groups. The safety profile of monoclonal antibodies have been proven in other disease areas such as oncology and other immune associated diseases. So monoclonal antibodies have a relatively good safety profile, which allows antibodies to be administered in association with other chemotherapy or complex medications. So the patients don't need to stop antifungal treatment or prophylaxis when they have to undergo chemotherapy. Antibodies have biological half-life, increased biological half-life compared to small molecules. So we can do once a month dosing as opposed to daily dosing, which is one of the challenges I explained earlier. And also our antibodies are pan-fungal, which means these antibodies are active against all the key fungal pathogens, or the Candida species and also Aspergillus. And they also target drug-resistant clinical isolates. So this slide here captures the Brigid Bio journey in a timeline graph. So in Brigid Bio, we have a proprietary drug discovery platform with which we identified these novel drug targets and developed fully human monoclonal antibodies. And all the initial work, the development of the drug discovery platform, antibody development and characterization, all this was done through academic grant funding, which came into both Professor Munro's lab and our lab in the Scottish Biologics facility. So the work started on more than a decade back with the antibody isolation and characterization. And we published our findings and we also filed the patent. All of this was supported by University of Aberdeen. The commercial development of this project started in 2023, where we managed to get funding from Scottish Enterprise. Scottish Enterprise is an economic development agency for the Scottish government. And this particular funding, called the High Growth Spin-Out funding, supports the translation of academic research into spin-out companies. And this funding specifically addresses that gap of early stage funding for academic research within the universities in Scotland, who wish to then develop their technology into a company. So Scottish Enterprise High Growth Funding kind of kick-started our commercialization journey, I would say. And we also won several awards during that period. Converge Challenge Award, which is for Scottish university businesses. We also won award from Edge. That's another business competition for Scotland. But also we participated in a lot of business trainings and I would say the kind of partnership building programs. This raised the profile of the company, but also myself and Professor Carol Munro as founders of the company. I have to specify this particular program, which is funded by Innovate UK, called Global Business Innovation Program. This particular one for AMR, specific companies was 15 companies from UK had the opportunity to visit Switzerland and then meet with the funders, meet with industry, biotech, pharma industries working in the space, and also other strategic academic partners. And that is where I met INCATE for the first time as part of the AMR Basel conference. Last year, we received funding from Innovate UK, a program called iCure. This is, again, for spinning out companies from universities in the UK. And that triggered our spin out in July last year. Along with Innovate UK funding, we also got match funding from Scottish Enterprise, and we also was successful with INCATE Stage 2 competition. That really raised our profile as an antifungal therapeutics company within Europe, and I would say also amongst biotech pharma partners within this space. We also received another award from National Scottish Edge competition. So we were selected as a Future Edge winner for the Edge competition. So the reason I was saying all this is that, so all these business training programs and winning several of these awards basically improved the visibility of the company and also added credibility for us as founders of this business. So if I reflect on my journey, my transition from academia into industry or setting up a business, I have to say it has been an incredible journey, but it was also a steep learning curve for me. And I tried to embrace every opportunity I got along the way. There has been a lot of challenges, of course, and I would highlight a few of them, and I'll also kind of, explain how we kind of got around some of those challenges. So access to funding is a challenge all early stage companies face, innovators, drug developers at this stage. If you're trying to move from academia into setting up your own business, access to funding is your main challenge. And we had the same problem. And I have to say that, for us, being in anti-infective space is even more challenging because this is a disease area where profitability is limited. So at a very early stage, investors, this is a very high risk proposition for investors, and not a lot of investors invest in this area. So we had to look into commercialization grants and non-dilutive funding. And this is where organizations like the Scottish Enterprise, Innovate UK funding, INCATE funding all came into play. And all these fundings have been the lifeline of Brigid Bio as a business. I also, wanted to talk about the credibility. So if you are transitioning from academia into industry or into an entrepreneur, as an academic, we all have our publications, our track record in getting grant funding as, to show the credibility of your research and how successful you are in your career. But if you're a first time into entrepreneurship, setting up a business, there is no real track record there for you. So this is where I had to build a strong, a credible team around me, which consisted of commercial experts who have done this before and and had successful exits in the past. And I also wanted to emphasize the winning awards and then being in business programs also increase the credibility and improve the visibility of your profile. And the power of network, I don't need to mention this. This is really something we all need for our professional success. Raising your profile, opening doors, new opportunities are very much through the network. And I've been quite fortunate, I would say, to have an incredible group of mentors and advisors and champions throughout my career, and the mentors who really give you clarity on your career roles, career goals, and also champions who are there at the right place to seize the right opportunity for you. So as they say out there, to set up a business, you need a village around you. And for me, I'm incredibly fortunate, and I'm ever thankful to the funders, my mentors, advisors, university tech transfer team, and academic and industry partners and collaborators I've worked with, who made Brigid Bio a reality. So thank you for listening. I am very happy to take any questions or contribute to the discussions later. Thank you. If anyone has any questions right now, please put that into the Q&A. And I think I can see some questions already. So what I'll do, I'll go through these questions and then we go to the next speaker. So I've got a question here. What was the most important for your decision to wish to translate, or the fun to found a company? Right, that's a really interesting question. I would say it was the wish to translate. Initially I was very reluctant to found a company, to become a founder, mainly because of the I didn't have a track record. I didn't know whether this is something that is something I can do. So we all talk about imposter syndrome, and I suffer from imposter syndrome a lot. So it was mainly the translation. So if there are other projects as well which I've started and I'm managing in Scottish Biologics facility, all of them I have this so this the kind of motivation or the ambition behind all projects is to translate them into either novel drugs or novel diagnostic products. I hope I answered that question. If you need more, we can talk about that in the panel session. What helped? Next question is, what helped to stay in the startup world? I would say it's the support I got. I cannot thank enough the people who helped me, who were around me to give me the confidence, first of all, to kind of give me the confidence that I can do this, I can lead a company, I can become a founder. So that is, I would say, that is that would be the most significant part, I would say, that helped me with this venture. The next question: which languages, like the ones from IP, investors, etc., was the most important one to learn early on? Right. No, this is really a very good question. We really need to understand the IP, how the IP, the intellectual property landscape works. It's very important to understand the language. Investors as well. So this is where I would say. So I'll quickly say how I got training or got much more confidence in dealing with it. So the IP, I would say, so a lot of help from the university tech transfer team, but also in Aberdeen, we have even through the university or through other regional ecosystem builders, they do IP workshops. So I attended those workshops, and that gives you much more understanding of how do you look at IP, and how do you talk the language of IP and understand that. Investors, again, I get a lot of help from our chairman, who is a seasoned. He started as a CEO. He takes up chairman, non-executive roles in a lot of spin-out startup companies. And all my initial conversations, and even now with investors, I get the help from my chairman. And it's, again, like I said, it's always a learning curve. Every day is a school day for me. So I hope that answered your question. I will now move on to our next speaker. I have the pleasure of introducing Alessandro Mazzetti. Alessandro is an aerospace engineer by training, and he has a PhD in rocket propulsion. And during his 15 years of professional activity, he worked in academic research as part of a startup active in innovations across the fields, across different areas in university innovation department. He's the head of innovation and entrepreneurship at the innovation office at the University of Basel, where he works to support the translation of academic excellence into impactful ventures and startup creation. He focuses on strengthening the early stage innovation pipeline across various industries, including life sciences, deep tech, and biotechnology. And he works with researchers and entrepreneurs from idea development through to company formation. In his role, Alessandro leads programs that connect academia, industry, and investors with a strong emphasis on structured pre-incubation, mentoring, and ecosystem building. And he's involved in Spark, Western Switzerland, which is part of the international Spark network, supporting early stage life science innovation. Alessandro is also in charge of building collaborations with industry and enabling international outreach with programs like Superpella, where startups from outside Switzerland are accelerated in Basel. His work is centered on enabling scientists and clinicians to become entrepreneurs, accelerating the path from research to patient impact through collaboration across the Swiss and international innovation ecosystem. So there is a lot of wealth in Alessandro's career journey so far. I could see from the biography here. So Alessandro, the floor is yours. Looking forward to your talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Soumya. I hope that my speech will be up to my introduction. Thank you so much for that. And also thank you to the INCATE team for having me tonight. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to be able to speak with scientists and researchers on their journey to become more entrepreneurial and to translate their discoveries from lab to societal impact, where in our vision at the Innovation Office, entrepreneurship is a tool and not necessarily the end game of bringing these great discoveries for the good of patients, of course, in the life science. I will share my screen and share with you a few slides tonight. I hope you can see that. It should come right now. So exactly, I work at the University of Basel Innovation Office. We are not a pure tech transfer unit, but we are rather an enabling unit supporting translation from academic lab possibly to market with different supporting mechanisms. In brief, we cover entrepreneurship education with a team led by a colleague trying to build all the skills that are needed, whether you're a bachelor, a master student, PhD, or a PI, to support in the journey. We developed a number of startup creation supporting mechanisms linking ideas to venture funding with acceleration pre-incubations program like Spark has been mentioned. And finally, we try to bring together also an international community of innovators accelerating startups here in Basel and try to bridge that with industry expertise, which might not be or often is not really a great part of the scientist journey, but this expertise is very important to be able to bring discoveries finally from lab to impact. I will try tonight to be a bit inspiring and to discuss with you, however is possible, how to use entrepreneurship as a practical bridge between science and impact on the fact that you are not alone in this journey. There's a lot of support, but a bit of a mindset shift is also needed from different players and stakeholders. I like normally to start my interactions and my discussions with scientists from a number, which is 65%, is quite a big number. And I don't know if you are already aware, but this number is the amount of FDA-approved drugs that don't come from the big pharma or the pharmaceutical industry pipeline. So meaning the majority of the drugs that get approved for patient use come from outside the pipeline from the big pharma. So basically it's from you. And only a few of them are direct out licensing from academia, meaning that the startup, the entrepreneurship journey is extremely important to actually bring new drugs and new therapeutics for positive impact on patient life. However, we know, and Soumya mentioned as a really great example of her personal journey, that however, this is not easy. There's a huge challenge, or there's many challenges. And one, for example, is how to translate discovery to impact, bridging this pre-commercialization gap and a scaling gap in terms of funding. As scientists, you and us, we are all well trained to apply for grants and to get grants, to get funding to bridge when the grants are not available anymore, but you need to build a startup company is not exactly the same thing, but there's a lot of things you can learn from that and leverage. The fact that this gap is not only yours personal gap, but is a shared gap is really something out there, and there's more and more mechanisms to support you, like INCATE, for example, bridging that gap that are super important. What does this gap mean? How does this gap look like? Here I give the example of biotech, life science, especially in Switzerland, but with the due difference, you can apply it for in many regions, in many places in Europe or in the world. We notice a first gap of roughly $250,000 to make your project fundable. What does it mean? This funding should cover the basic proof of concept work, initial team salary, incorporation cost, the IP maintenance. Here, the goal is not really to have a perfect result, is to have something that enables convincing then investors and people out there that your team is able to make it happen, to have some first results that encourage the fact that this can work. And then from making it fundable, it's really crucial to start building a story to make your project, what we kind of phrase it, making it investable. There, the barrier or the need is much bigger. It's no longer about proving main technical feasibility, but it's really to execute the killer experiment that don't just prove it's possible, but it has market potential. And this is kind of a bit of a catch-22, which are the right experiments, how to use these experiments to convince and unlock further funding and to build a scalable team structure that would actually make it happen, and make it happen with a credible business opportunity for the ones that will be investing in you. Is it that simple? Maybe, but what we see important is to kind of think about, as academics, as scientists, that a mindset shift is needed. As academics, as scientists, we are trained to learn and to learn fast and to prove our hypothesis somehow in a linear way. You start from a hypothesis, you validate that, you have the results, and normally you publish. If the hypothesis is not proven, then you go back and you build a new hypothesis. In the entrepreneurial mindset, it's important to kind of start thinking with the end in mind. What's the end game you want to have? How many patients, which patients, for which indication? And then backtrack. What are the experiments and what are all the pieces and elements that you have to put in place to be sure that you can reach that goal credibly, also in a resource-constrained environment. Non-dilutive funding is still crucial. It's not just about cash, it's also about validation. When you can have a grant, this is a token that some process and some expert board validated your position, and this can also enable to unlock further potential. And it's important in this mindset shift to not believe that you are alone, but you have a whole network normally around you, wherever you are located, in different forms and shapes, with some more strength in some places and maybe with some improvement in some other places, but there is a network around you, and there are also global initiatives that can support you wherever you are. is I don't want here to send a message that the academics are the only ones who have to shift their mind. It would be important also for entities like us, like INCATE, all the enablers and supporters to promote a mindset shift also in industry. We see a lot of wait and see mindsets. When you try to engage with industry to get feedback, very often you hear, the project is lacking data, the project is lacking quality compared to somebody else, you don't have enough entrepreneurial skill. This is what we kind of a bit, in a friendly way, name it the lion's den mindset. Industry is staying there and waiting for you to be more ready. What we try to promote also with our own industry partnerships is to engage with industry, so to be able to give feedback, to come and talk to you and not just say you are not ready, but what that being not ready means, which kind of experiments, which kind of developments would they like to see, and which kind of developments they would be open to support you to develop. Finally, we're also talking about entrepreneurship, and so we cannot do it without talking about investment and fundraising. So we see a lot of VCs and investors, institutional or different type, that have quite a Darwinistic mindset, as we might say. Survival of the fittest. If the project is not ready, it means that they are just not ready. And so why should we take an effort to help them and discuss with them? They can just come back later. What we try to do is to really encourage an enabling mindset. We try ourselves to engage with venture capitalists and investors, which also have the technical skills and the scientific expertise besides the financial capacity to support you and support projects like you in developing towards a more interesting and project that they might be ready to then fund. So all in all, we see that for all the stakeholders, it's important to shift gradually the mindset. The scientists have to think a bit differently from what they're used to. The industry, we encourage them to come closer to you, innovators, potential entrepreneurs, science entrepreneurs, and share their expertise. Same with the investors. And finally, also academia should gradually, hopefully, change their mindset. It's happening at different speeds in different places. I think the examples from Soumya in the UK, it's normally very, very well advanced. Entrepreneurship should become and is becoming more and more part of the academic core mission and not just a side, nice to have activity. Not because the universities should become a money-making machine, but because innovation means impact, and more universities are realizing that to have positive impact on society is part of their core mission, side by side with teaching and doing excellent research. So this is a bit the message as I wanted to convey you in your journey from becoming, scientists to translating for impact and becoming entrepreneurs in the meantime. And if you have questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Alessandro. That was excellent. And so you kind of all the messaging, what you have been, what you kind of described through your talk is all very relevant, and so I could really relate to some of those to my journey, and where and like you said, that starting off, is it fundable, and from there, you're taking it to the next stage, and how do you differentiate between that academic mindset and the entrepreneurial mindset and all that. So this is and how the universities are now more and more recognizing the need for so how do they translate academic research and make them into to create real world impact, and also the more and more universities recognizing it, and as a result of this, a lot of researchers are now getting support from universities like tech transfer team for this starting this journey. So we have a few questions in the question box. So the first question is, do you recognize yourself being an entrepreneur?
So yes, in a sense, yes, we are a bit somehow lucky and somehow challenged by our own university here in Basel as innovation office, because the university built us not as a pure administrative or tech transfer unit, but really as an entrepreneurial unit, meaning that we are only partially funded by the university, roughly 1/3 of our budget. And for any program, new activity, new supporting instrument we want to build for entrepreneurs, not for our own sake, but for the community, we have to find out there the money to run it. So whether it's with industry sponsorship or with grants that we apply in different forms and shape from different regions and governments, we really like to say, and this is a reality, that we have to live the entrepreneurial journey ourselves, where we just don't tell the story, but we live it. So on one hand, of course, it's a challenge because, to have to be fully funded and happy with that is nice, but it keeps us also hungry to do more and to discover and develop more.
Mm-hmm. And do you invest? Do you have like an investment pot for your spin-out companies?
So we don't have a fund as a University of Basel, or not yet. We are working in that direction, so it's not a very common thing in Switzerland yet. What we have is a non-dilutive instrument that we use to support a few startup projects a year. We have 50,000 Swiss francs we can assign to roughly 4 projects a year. And it's not a pure scientific grant. It's more like a translational instrument for projects that are on the way for building a startup. And so, for example, we don't prescribe that this money is used for proof of concept or for experiments. We leave to the projects to tell us what they're going to use the money for. We have an external jury made of industry experts, entrepreneurs, investors that look at the project with that lens. So it's not a purely academic grant. So we really push people to be entrepreneurial to get that money.
That's great. Thank you. The next question is, how do you identify entrepreneurs in Basel?
How do I identify entrepreneurs in Basel?
Plenty of them around.
We do a lot of things. We really do a lot of things. We try to, the grant, I won't hide it, was built at the beginning as a bit of a small carrot to lure entrepreneurial projects out of the lab. But very soon it changed a bit scope. Now people know it's there and know what it needs to do that. We do a lot of community engagement. When we started 8-9 years ago, we were doing one entrepreneurs club every month to bring the startup community really in one place physically. We have now investor days, pitching sessions, courses, semester courses for PhD and postdocs. We really have a number of engagements, all related to entrepreneurship, investment readiness, workshops with experts. We really try to attack it from all the angles possible.
Oh, sounds amazing. I think University of Aberdeen, there's some things we could learn from what you are doing successfully there.
Thank you.
Next question, setting up a startup, how do you judge the importance of people or management versus science of project?
The fair answer is that we as Innovation Office don't really judge that. We try to encourage that and make sure that people go live the journey. What we hear from our ecosystem, how investors or industry partners or experts evaluate that, is that at the very beginning and all along, science is extremely important and the backbone. Without solid science that's credible, that can be demonstrated, that can be reproduced, and it's really validated, every project is just not gonna work. But at the same time, and it is taking more and more importance along the journey, especially when one project is interacting with investors, to give the impression and the credibility that the team is gonna make it happen is as much as important, or even more important than the science. At some point, after some due diligence, and you have been also through the entrepreneurial journey, at some point and after the due diligence, the science will be considered, okay, that's it. We know it's solid. You need to do more experiments, generate more data, but the science is there. What investors want to see is then people that are going to bring it, beyond the lab. So that's the starting point, but then the people and the team credibility plays a huge role. I don't know if I answered the question, if this was the...
No, that's absolutely the way it should be. So very good. The next one, being a teacher at university, how can we offer opportunities to open the mind of the students for the change in mindset?
Oh, great question. In general, I don't know if there is a universal answer. I can tell a bit what we did and what we tried. And I think there's two parts to this answer from our side. One is we just decided that this was possible and needed, across, in between, or all around the normal academic structures. So we found out that there was no course giving any student or any PhD a primer on fundamentals of entrepreneurship. Are we faculty? No, we aren't. And we decided nevertheless that we would do it. So we found a way to make it happen. And now we have at least 3 or 4 courses for different target groups in the university that build the mindset and give the skills in entrepreneurship. The second part is that most of our programs are built by going somewhere in the world where we believe there's a best practice, and we try to learn from there, bring it back, and make it a bit of a local version of it. So change it a little bit so it's working in our local ecosystem. For the education, what we did is we went to Finland, where entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial education is part of the curriculum since high school or even earlier. So even kids are exposed to entrepreneurial mindset. And there, the methodology is to do it learn by doing. So we don't have teachers that are academics. Our trainers are not academic professors. They are people from the industry, from the business side, who did startups and come and tell how to make it happen. And we don't do it from a theoretical point of view, but applicants to our courses have to apply with a startup idea. A number of ideas are selected and are used as case studies all along the course. So people really learn by doing. They work on a startup case, whether it's a real startup. In some cases, it's a real startup that then becomes a company. In some cases, it's a learning case study, but that starts from a real idea, and they have to, do the business plan, do the validation plan, learn how to pitch. So we give all the ingredients like it's a real startup, and in some cases it becomes one.
Yeah, that's great. Sounds really good. A good program to be on. We have 2 more questions in the Q&A box. What I'm going to do is move on to our next speaker, and then we can come back to those questions in the panel session, if that's okay. So thank you, Alessandro, once again, for the great talk and all the answers to the questions. So with that, I would now like to introduce Thomas Meier as our next speaker. And from the CV, Thomas, I can see you are a dynamic life science entrepreneur who established Santhera Pharmaceuticals, a successful biotech specialty pharma company in the Basel area in Switzerland. In the past 25 years, Thomas held executive manager, CSO, and CEO and board positions at Santhera, and successfully executed merger acquisitions, product licensing, and turnaround situations. In 2020, Thomas became managing partner at Viopas Venture Consulting, where he advises life sciences companies in matters of business development. Currently, Thomas holds board positions at several private and public pharma and biotech companies. Thomas has a PhD in biology, and he was a lecturer in neurosciences at the Biozentrum University of Basel. And he's an internationally recognized scientist with track record in clinical research of orphan diseases. With that, Thomas, the floor is yours. Looking forward to your talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, organizers, allowing me to present today. I would like to continue the theme that was picked up by Alessandro now, and which is about the mindset change that is required from a scientist to become an entrepreneur, and also the difference between an entrepreneur and a manager. So let me do so by calling the slides here. A second. So I hope you can see that. I switch to the presentation mode. All right. I assume that you can see that. So what I will really talk about is the person, the entrepreneur, what it does take in order to switch that spirit that Alessandro also already mentioned, to become an entrepreneur from a scientist. And you will see that it's not very much of text what I'm going to show, but rather a couple of images. And I hope that you can remember some of these images in the next weeks or months to come, where you make a decision whether you want to become an entrepreneur or not. So just looking back at what I did, just to introduce myself a little bit so that you know what we're talking about. So as it was mentioned, I am a scientist myself. I have postdoctoral studies in neurosciences and was becoming an associate professor level here at the University of Basel. Before I started my first company, and that's now already 28 years ago, and that was a GmbH, which is sort of the typical smaller scale companies, with the intention to do drug discovery for a rare disease, which at the time was no available treatment. Well, I started it very enthusiastically, and I was broke, and the company was bankrupt and insolvent within 12 months. So it failed miserably. But I believed in it, and I believed that the company's idea, drug discovery for neuromuscular diseases, was still valid. So I restarted it again a year later, now as a Aktiengesellschaft, an AG, a limited company, with money that I borrowed from family. And you should be reminded that for that organizational structure, you need about 100,000 Swiss francs, 120,000 euros to start. And then in the years to come, in the 3 years to come, I raised 10 million Swiss francs, 12 million euros in venture capital mainly, but clearly realized that the growth of the company is limited by my own lack of management skills. I was a scientist, I was not a manager. So the opportunity came along to allow a merger between my company and a German biotech company, and we started what became and still is Santhera Pharmaceuticals. I started as the CSO, Chief Scientific Officer in the company, and I was very lucky to have a CEO on the other side who actually then ran the combined entity, Santhera, for a number of years, and they could learn a lot from him during that period. In 2006, we went public on the Swiss Stock Exchange. We raised 100 million Swiss francs, 120 million euros at the time. And my roles within the company were mainly Chief Scientific Officer for 7 years or so, 6 years. And then between 2011 and 2019, I became also CEO, so I had a double role. And I have, in combination, I have a total of 15 years as an executive manager at a publicly traded company. And before I left, that was in end of 2019, the company had 150 people and about 5 subsidiaries in Europe, plus US, plus Canada. Since 2022, I'm the chairman of the board of Santhera, so I'm still very much involved in my company, although it's a public company. But I also founded, with my colleagues here, a advisory company, Viopas Venture Consulting. I also founded a gene therapy company out of the University of Basel very recently, and I'm a board member and co-founder of an Australian company in ophthalmology. So I have expertise in startup, merger, acquisitions, product licensing, turnaround situations, and growth financing. And that's what I'm currently doing as an advisor or board member to various startup companies or young companies. So what is entrepreneurship? And if you ask whatever ChatGPT and find out, there's a classical definition, which is probably not applicable to what we have to discuss. And that is the entrepreneur shifts economic resources out of an area of lower productivity and into an area of higher productivity and greater yield. Now that definition, as I said, is a bit outdated. It dates back to the early 19th century. A bit more applicable is actually the mindset definition. Entrepreneurship is better described as a mindset that is opportunity obsessed, holistic in approach, and leadership balanced. Again, a bit theoretical, and we come to the meat and bone of these definitions as we go forward. Another one is the risk and innovation definition. Entrepreneurship is about creating something new, a product, a service, a process, or the opportunity and value creation definition. Entrepreneurship is about the ability to translate into inventions or technologies into products and service. It's all a bit theoretical, but I think you will realize that all of these definitions have some ingredients in it that we will need to recognize in the course of becoming an entrepreneur. So key roles in biotech startups. So there's as was discussed by Alessandro and also demonstrated very impressively by Soumya, there's a shift between, in order for a scientist to become an entrepreneur, there's a mindset shift. And that is what also Alessandro said. And not all scientists are entrepreneurs. We should recognize that. And I will show you a solution to that dilemma. If you are a scientist, but you don't want to become an entrepreneur, there might be a way around it. And we come to that in a minute. And then the other one is the distinction between an entrepreneur and a manager. Entrepreneurship is driven by innovation and change. Entrepreneurs operate in uncertain, dynamic environments and are motivated by opportunity rather than by resource control. The management focusing on optimizing existing operations, you take what you have, and managers aim to plan, coordinate, and maintain efficiency in a stable organizational structure. That is sort of the definition of a manager. And we come to this in more detail. So what is it that a scientist and the entrepreneur are different? Why are they different? Well, the scientist seeks precision. They're trained to work with data, with numbers, and so forth. The entrepreneur has to accept uncertainty. And it starts with uncertainty of funding. You may not have the resources to see all the way through to the end of the product. But still you take a risk and you want to go forward and you want to invest your enthusiasm and your colleagues' resources into that project. So uncertainty and ambiguity is something you as an entrepreneur should be comfortable with. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to sustain that. And then, as I say, the difference between entrepreneur and manager, and this is something that I see quite often fails, that entrepreneurs who have an idea how a product could be used in a setting, in a therapy or whatever it is, and they also think they're managers, and they are not. And this is because the manager actually executes on what the entrepreneur actually sees as an opportunity. So the entrepreneur has to see something which others don't see in order to come forward with a product idea. And the manager actually implements with the resources that he or she has available this product idea. I can summarize very simply. Entrepreneurs design and build the ship. Managers sail it efficiently. And this is a distinction which I think it is something that you should be aware of, because I see sometimes companies fail because the scientist entrepreneur switch has happened, but the entrepreneur is not a manager and therefore is mismanaged, and the company goes bankrupt eventually. That can happen. So what we want is entrepreneurs. So we want to accelerate the shift from a scientist into entrepreneurial thinking, not necessarily the shift to management, because there are other solutions which I'm going to show you. So my definition of entrepreneur, or maybe a biotech entrepreneur, that's what I do, is driven by scientists who translate curiosity into industry-changing applications and products. So that is a translation from science into products. And that's something that is very, very important. And you never should forget this when you start your business there. As I said, there is a possibility that you say, okay, I'm a very good scientist, but I'm not the entrepreneur. I don't want to leave my scientific environment. I like the security where I am, and whatever. Then maybe there's an opportunity to find a senior person who has done it in the past and who is happy to take the entrepreneurial role in a dual function between the scientist and the entrepreneur. So don't give up if you say you have a good science background, you want to be a good scientist, but you don't make the switch to the entrepreneur. Look for somebody around you. There may be entrepreneurs who are typically older, more seasoned, and they might be willing to help you. And that's certainly something, a model that works very, very well, because these entrepreneurs often come then with a lot of network already, have experience in fundraising, and so forth. Now, there's a question, when is the right time to start a biotech company? So this decision is very critical. So when you step out of the academic world, when do you want to start your own company? And what can entrepreneurs use in order to make this decision when they make this step? I mean, what is cited here in the third bullet, it says that in biotech, universities generate discovery, but startups are the vehicle that turns discovery into innovation. And as Alessandro said before, there may be facilities around you in your university setting that help you to understand better whether you are in the right position to really take this step from a science background into an entrepreneurial setting. I have to say, and maybe Alessandro may disagree with me, that sometimes I see that companies start because it is en vogue, but they could have actually benefited for staying longer in the academic setting and doing certain critical experiments or other things before they really step out of the university setting, which typically then comes with cost for laboratory space, cost for personnel, and so forth, which distract the young entrepreneurs from the actual task, which is advancing their science. So there are a couple of things I wanted to mention, a couple of principles. And this is the first one is that don't wait for the perfect principle. Because you may be tempted to make your technology perfect. That means that you're trying to do another experiment, just one more experiment, just this control experiment, and so forth, and time passes by. If you don't stop that cycle, that you do just one more experiment or one more grant application, you will never get out of this university setting. But if you do stay too long in the university setting, then you may invest in work that ultimately later on in the industry setting, in the entrepreneurial world, may not be as valuable as you have thought. You may have done some experiments which are academically interesting, but they may not be the ones that actually bring your product forward. This is probably the most counterintuitive insight for scientists. In a startup, the clock runs on investor milestones, not experimental completeness. So you have to listen what the investor wants from you, potentially, so that you do these experiments, but don't overdo it. So there's a careful balance to be taken when to really take the step and start your company. And again, ask for advice. Ask for people who have done it in the past. Ask for your tech transfer office advice. Ask people, when do they think is the best time to get out of the scientific setting, academic setting, into the entrepreneurial world? The other one is the killer experiment test. I mean, as I said before, you can do a lot of experiments to further corroborate what you've done and so forth. But what is absolutely critical is that you ask yourself which experiment or set of experiments is needed for somebody to further invest in your discovery work in a standalone company then. And this is clearly, and you may not see it, so you again ask for help and ask people what they think is the killer experiment. But once the killer experiment is complete and you have replicated it and it's really robust data available, then the scientific case for a company startup is made. So again, don't overdo it, but do the right experiment, whatever killer experiment, validation of your product before you get started, but then actually get started as a company. What also should be considered, a couple of things which have been touched upon already. So the intellectual property status, so this is patents. It is very imperative that you understand your university's technology transfer office policies on intellectual property, on patents, on licensing terms, and whatever is needed in order to take the invention that you have done into a patentable technology, which you then in the company can license from the university. And that's absolutely paramount to do that upfront. It's not an afterthought, because you don't have if you don't have rights to your product or your idea, you wasted your effort. There are natural career transition points which sometimes make it easier to make the jump into the entrepreneurial world. That is the end of a PhD or the end of a postdoc period. And then you have to ask yourself, am I ready now to take that step? So leaving academic institution for a new venture can be risky, but it's also highly rewarding. So you have to ask yourself, can you tolerate the loss of the structured scientific environment and peer recognition? Because you will not have that anymore when you leave the academic world. Are you motivated by commercial impact, not just intellectual discovery? Are you ready to stay committed for many years, a decade or more? What does your spouse say to that? Can you tolerate severe frustration? And I talk about severe frustration for prolonged periods of time. And I come to that, why that happens. So these are questions, some of the questions I think you should ask yourself whether you are ready to take that step. So you did it. You started your company. What next? Well, you need to have multiple skill sets that support your venture. That is financial, general management, human resources, and further science. Obviously, you need to advance the science. So you can and you should build your team. You may not have to hire all these functions. They can be hired as consultants, for instance, but clearly financial and managerial are equally important than science. I'm currently advising a company with a great technology, but they're literally bankrupt. So I have to rescue them. And this is because they forgot about the financials. Clearly, they didn't look about what they do with the money. So I think that is something that you have to be very careful with. And then you have to learn what I always call kissing the frogs. The frogs are the guys with the money. And what you need to do is you need to kiss a lot of frogs in order to really get the money that you need in order to advance your venture. So get used to kissing the frogs. That is something that is an experience on its own, but it will be always needed because you always need money to support your venture. And then also a very important principle for success is you must take expert advice and ask for help. Don't be shy, ask for help, because it's not the question, can I do this? But rather, what has to be done to advance the product quickly? So if somebody has expertise that would help the product to be advanced further, faster, take that advice, take that support, because it's not about you showing that you can do it, but the company that your parties you started, they should be able to accelerate the product as fast as possible. Look for advisors with business background, with pharma background. They can work part-time, they can be an hourly consultant, they can work with stock options, whatever. They can be remunerated in many ways, but they bring expertise, they bring network, they bring validation. And honestly speaking, having a few gray hairs sitting around the table when you talk to a pharma partner or to a venture capitalist brings sets the scene in the right way, because then you can actually show that they cannot tell you everything that they want. So you have somebody who has seen it before. I think that is very helpful. Okay, what it means for you? Well, you need to get to know that you have to love the pain. There will be many weekends that you work, many hours, night shifts, holidays missed. I almost missed the birth of my second child. I mean, this is a lot of sacrifice, and it is very painful, not only for you, but for your entire family and your people around you, your family, your friends, your loved ones, and so forth. So you have to accept that there's a lot of pain involved, and I don't exaggerate. This is pain that goes to the level of burnout situations, which I've seen in the past. Then get used to no as an answer. The default answer for everybody is no. The regulators tell you no, your product is not ready for approval. The strategic partners say no, we need more data, as Alessandro said before. And the investors say no, we are waiting for more data and please come back later. So get used to no as an answer. And then be ready for the long haul. If you start this, stay in for 10 years. I think there's very rare occasions where a biotech company has an exit that is shorter than that. It does happen, I know, but be ready for the long haul. Very essential, know your product. It's the market stupid. That's a sentence that was actually used by Barack Obama in his second campaign. Clearly not the science, but the use of your product in a defined market, as detailed as possible, is what you need to have in order to convince investors to make the investment to advance it forward. And then you need to have a strategic plan. That's called business plan. And don't overdo it, but I think you have to ask clearly key elements of what is the science, what is the intellectual property that underpins the science, what is the market, what is the time to market, and what is the money you need. So it doesn't have to be very elaborate, but it has to be with numbers, not just storytelling, but numbers. You need to come up with numbers. And then your medical product, and I'm talking now to probably medical field or biotech companies, you must fulfill a need. The question is, do you understand the current practice that your product should be applied in detail? Not just a quick search in the internet, but really, do you have sufficient detailed knowledge about the current practice? What is the difference that your product makes according or in comparison to other competitors? What is the TPP, the target product profile? What do you want to achieve with your product compared to others? Is your development program filling the gap? So do you have the necessary steps planned that actually make your scientific idea a valid product that can be approved? And then ask yourself, where is the highest unmet medical need where the product could be approved? Because if you address a high unmet medical need, the approval path may be easier than just a Me Too application. And also, investors would like to see innovative products, not just Me Too products. So what is the highest unmet medical need that you can place your product in? The business plan, your strategic business plan, is a roadmap and a communication tool. So you have a plan, but don't be shy to change it. You have a situation analysis, you develop a strategy, you implement the changes in the action plan, you ask for the resources, and you do the next step. Every new step, every new development step changes your business plan to the extent that you need more other resources, different resources, and you are a step further that needs to be reflected. Again, where is the highest unmet medical need where you can play with your product? And then while you're doing that, I mean, in the end, hopefully that you're successful and your drug or device or methodology is approved by regulators and you can actually treat patients with. I had the pleasure of actually defending the final approval stage at the European level for a drug that we developed for an inherited form of blindness. So today there are patients out there with a certain genetic disease that cause blindness, and due to our drug, they can actually see again. We had patients that were blind, could not walk out of the door. They were able to drive cars again afterwards. And in another case where Santhera is now very successful, we have a drug for Duchenne muscular dystrophy approved in Europe, US, Canada, China, in approval in Japan and multiple other countries. So this is what we aim for, bring a drug to the market and address a medical need. And what I'm doing now is, thank you very much, and what I'm doing actually as a partner at Viopas Venture Consulting, advise companies, as I said, in doing exactly what I showed you, becoming entrepreneurs and supporting entrepreneurs in their journey to become successful. With this, I end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. Thanks for sharing all your insights, incredible journeys that you had, not just with one, but with several drugs and all those, the impact that these drugs are making in patient lives. So it's such a pleasure to hear all these success stories. Thanks again. So we've got a few questions now. So what I'm going to do, we've got two questions which we didn't answer from previous talks, but I'll go to a couple of questions for you, Thomas, and then after that we can go to the rest of the questions. So one question is, would you say that leadership is an important quality? Which of the scientist, entrepreneur, or manager most needs leadership skills?
A scientist, I would think the ordinary scientist is a PhD student, so doesn't have leadership skills. And you learn leadership with time. And ideally, in my case, it was a situation that I was a scientist still as a CSO, but had very few people around me. But I learned leadership skills with the CEO, which became a mentor for me over time. So the manager has to have leadership skills because he has to deal with staff and so forth. The entrepreneur, I would think that the entrepreneur should have a vision. So entrepreneur wants to develop that particular methodology into a drug. and doesn't have to necessarily be leadership, but should be enthusiastic about what she or he wants to do. And this enthusiasm then needs to be translated into a managerial process, and the manager should actually then have the leadership to lead a larger team. So the answer is, the later in the stage is leadership. In the beginning, it's really enthusiasm. You have to show, and as you, Soumya, also showed in your presentation, bring it across that you have a great idea, that you're convinced that it works, and you have the data to back it up.
Great, thank you. Another question is, in your experience, do you think that many entrepreneurs stay for the whole of the drug development process, or are they more likely to move on to new challenges?
Both happen. So I stayed. It depends a little bit of the background. I guess entrepreneurs, they have to listen to their heart. I mean, if they say, okay, I started a company and is now good faith going forward. My dream is actually started and the train has left the station and I can look for other opportunities, then this is possible. I think there's no general answers. I have now the pleasure to start other companies, advise other companies. So once you have this entrepreneurial spirit, you try to live it in multiple ways. And I think that's what I would encourage you.
Okay, no, that's great. Yeah, it's again, different for different people. Maybe one more. Is it important to be paying your business advisors? I have a small group of industry advisors, but can't really pay any of them for their advice currently, as I don't have money yet.
This is what I'm encountering every day. I get 5 calls every day and say, okay, can you work for us for free? I do this and others do that as well. So it depends a little bit. If it is a shorter period of time and you have really dedicated people, they may do it for free. You can also think about, with some caveat, to participate them in your venture. So if you can give out stock options and so forth, if you have it already. I think you should try to really boldly ask, can you help me? And I can't pay you, but maybe I can pay you later, or maybe give you stock options later, or whatever you try it. It works. I'm now doing some work which eventually might come into a paid consultancy arrangement, but for now it is really helping them because they're in a crisis situation and we can't lose time. So I jumped in and said, okay, I help you. And when we are successful out of this crisis, then maybe you pay me something. So ask your advisors simply, can you help me for half a year for free, whatever, 1 day a week or whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think, again, you'll be amazed. Some people are very generous with their time. They really want to, and especially if they have, that kind of common cause, want to make a difference. And if they have already made a successful exit and all that, so some of them genuinely want to help the upcoming entrepreneurs or people who are starting. So so it's just like you said, Thomas. You just need to go. Don't be shy. Go and ask people, and then you'll find some real gems. That's our experience as well. So some people are like, really, we've benefited a lot from people who have been very generous with their time and supporting us. Another question: the value of a product is what people are prepared to pay for it. How important is a detailed market analysis?
Not immediately. I think that is maybe the second stage of your development. I mean, first of all, you have to prove that your product, whatever it is, a molecule that has a certain activity or a device that has a certain task, that can fulfill a certain task, is working. But once you ask for large amounts of money, where you actually move your product toward approval, people will ask about, so what is the market? And what I'm sometimes hearing in business plans is such a statement, okay, there are whatever, so many million of cancer patients out there, and maybe 50% we can address. And they have no idea that there are 15 companies already in the field and actually distributing products. So the answer is, it is necessary, not immediately, but at some point when you ask for money that brings your product closer to approval, people will ask you, what is your understanding of your market? And then if this question comes up, you have to spend some money on doing that. And you definitely need professional help to understand the market.
Yeah, I mean, and I can add to that the importance of detailed market analysis. And I think, so one thing we all, especially when we develop something in academia, as academics, we're very proud of what we have achieved, and and we get really kind of hung up on the technical, like we want to make it as technically best attractive as possible, but sometimes the market don't need that much level of sophistication, right? So you need to really understand where is that your product is going to fit in the market, where is the and where are you going to apply it first. There might be several applications to that technology or the product that you have developed, but you need to really understand where are you going to, what is that first. Some people use the term beachhead market terminology. Some people don't like that terminology, but it's always identifying, what is that first market group where you're going to go and position your product and show value. And then from there, you kind of develop. So this is, and all that, you get, this is all guided by your detailed market analysis. That's what that piece of work will tell you where you're going to position your product. So it's very important. And in our case, we've used external consultants. We also did a program which was supported by or funded by Innovate UK, where I have to go and speak to over 100 customers, do 100 plus interviews with customers and understand the market, and then come up with the argument that why do we need to develop this as a product, and why do we need to set it up as a spin-out company. So it's very important, and that helped us a lot now when we speak to investors. Okay, thank you very much. And I will maybe I'll take this next question to you, Alessandro. What if I'm a great scientist, but I don't feel comfortable to build my company myself yet? What do you have? What advice do you have?
So the natural answer, I think that's totally fine. What we see, whether you are PhD, postdoc, PI level, faculty, full professors, not everyone will become an entrepreneur or has to become an entrepreneur. There's multiple ways to turn a discovery into impact. And here I'm not talking in traditional tech transfer office terms, license it to a pharma industry. That, let's be clear, it just doesn't happen so much anymore. We have seen the numbers, 4 out of 138 is not really encouraging. But what I mean here is there's venture builders out there. There's maybe in your lab, there's another PhD or a postdoc that has a bit more entrepreneurial drive. Talk to people, explore multiple avenues. If you're a great scientist, be the scientific heart of that discovery and find people that can complement your skill and your drive, and have them be the entrepreneur and help you bring that to market.
Yeah, if I may just add to, this is what I was saying, that you can partner with an entrepreneur who done it before, and then you just are a team. This works.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. Sometimes we see that with our academics who don't really want to, they do great science, but don't want to set up a company. But then there might be, like you said, early career researchers, postdocs who have that entrepreneurial drive. So form a team and then, develop that technology further. Being a teacher in academia, when and how did you realize that you wanted to become an entrepreneur? Thomas, do you want to?
I can tell you, when I was postdoc in the United States, it was 1996 or so. I realized for the first time that there in the university, all the professors, they were either advising a startup companies or had the startup company themselves, or were involved in a startup company, spin-out companies. And this was not known in Switzerland at the time. So when I came back, I thought, well, we can do that here as well. And I was actually the first one who started a company out of the University of Basel Biozentrum at the time, because it was not actually known. So I got it actually first exposure to that thinking in the US when I did my postdoc there.
No, in the US they have. It's really, I think it feels like it's in their DNA. sometimes. But thank you. I will take this next question on antifungals, and after that, there is one question for all the speakers. So this question is: what is the perspective of investors or venture capitalists on novel antibiotics and antifungals? So from my experience speaking to investors, there are vast majority of investors are still reluctant. They are not still convinced with the commercial opportunity, especially, so like I said, the profitability is limited compared to other disease indications. So if you invest in an oncology or an autoimmune disease drug discovery company, then your deal values are high, so your returns are high. So a lot of investors are still very reluctant, and it's also the fact that so the challenges that we have seen with antibiotic, the commercial pipeline, and how it's we keep hearing about the broken pipeline and broken commercial that kind of market for antibiotics. You develop a new drug, but the drug ends up being kept as the drug of last resort. So the sales are not enough to gain the or recoup the investment that has gone into that drug development. So there is a lot of that still out there. We keep hearing that from a lot of investors, but there are also at the same time specialist impact type investors who wants to invest in these type of opportunities, and they're very limited at the moment. We would like to see more and more impact investors coming forward and supporting these early stage companies, because a lot of this innovation is happening in these early stage companies. Pharma is not innovating in anti-infectives much, but something that's quite encouraging is the number of acquisitions that's happening recently, and maybe not in therapeutics but vaccine. Eli Lilly, the press release a couple of days back was 3 vaccine companies were acquired by Eli Lilly, and altogether it was in the tune of, I think, $3+ billion US. So these are encouraging stories for us as companies, and when we speak to investors, you could show that. So the pharma is starting to show some sort of interest back into acquiring these novel assets and products into their pipeline. So I would say it's not all doom and gloom, and we start to see some silver lining here and there. So that's my take on it. And the next question, that will be our last question for today's session. When and how did you realize that you are an entrepreneur and decided to go for it?
Well, who is taking first? You?
I can, well, like I said, so I don't think it was more realizing or that I'm an entrepreneur. Like I said, for me, that was the most practical way, a realistic way of translating some of the research into products. And that then I realized that the way to go forward with that is, spinning out a company and then developing this into the clinical development. Like Alessandro said, we did look at licensing of this, but then at a very early stage, you don't really, yes, there are companies interested in it, but they want everything for nothing, which is not, so they don't really value at that stage, the value of that technology or the project is quite low. So we wanted to build value and de-risk it. This is the way forward, and that's what made me, starting this journey.
Maybe to add, so I think I gave you a couple of hints of what you need to answer for yourself in order to make this decision to become an entrepreneur. So if you want to really take this a step forward, go into the business world and leave the academic setting, talk to investors, talk to pharma companies. If you like to do that, if you can sell your science also in a very credible way, then you may have the ingredients to become an entrepreneur. But maybe you only realize that you have become one in retrospect. After a few years, you realize, I did it. So I'm an entrepreneur.
Alessandro, do you want to add?
Yeah,
that?
I don't know, guys, if compared to you that really did, the startup journey, hardcore, if I can dare to call myself an entrepreneur. I was part of a startup. I'm supporting startups, but I didn't take the leap, maybe not yet. So I don't know if I can say, what made me do the startup journey. I think what really resonates with me is some of what Thomas said at the very beginning. That's the definition of entrepreneurship, or one of the definition of entrepreneurship, that is really the drive to capture opportunities, the pursuit of an opportunity under really constrained resources. And I think that's what makes it very exciting, because, imagine you have all the money in this world, you can just do it. It's easy. Is it the challenge? I think what really drives people there is the challenge and the potential for impact that one can achieve directly, or in my case, indirectly.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And I can see Peter now appearing on the screen. Peter.
Absolutely. I feel bad to stop it here, but Soumya, gentlemen, thank you very, very much. That was very inspiring. I'm sure if I should get reborn, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. That is absolutely enlightening. Sharing your experiences, that's so helpful. That's what we try to do at INCATE as much as we can. I think we feel the very same as with Alessandro and with all of you. Thank you very, very much. I think I address to the audience also my thanks. Thanks for participating. Thanks for being active and contribute to the discussion. If you want to know more about it, please go to www.incate.net for news, or reach out to us at info@incate.net. We are happy to support innovators in the fields of antimicrobials, and maybe can pass you to one of the experts we have met today. Thank you very much for your contributions, for the moderation. It was very inspiring, and I'm looking forward to see you all on this channel again. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.